I'm sure, like other Dolphins fans, I'm still recovering from that tough loss against the 49ers yesterday. But there's still so much time left to play this season, and I think 5 games left in total. The next 3 consecutive are prime time. So if you want to find a way to respond from this loss, the stage is set next week on Sunday Night Football. Dolphins versus Chargers, Tua versus Herbert. You got to find a way to win that game. You got to find a way to respond to this loss, respond to all the haters who are finally getting the chance to shine now that Tua finally has a bad game this season. But this video is just going to be going over some things the Dolphins couldn't do, their main problems in the game yesterday, and then wrapping it up with some news because we had a lot of Dolphins news come in today after a loss yesterday. But the first thing is that they couldn't stop the offense, mainly Christian McCaffrey. But I want to give major credits to Brock Purdy, who was literally Mr. Irrelevant, the very last pick in the 2022 draft. He came in after Jimmy Garoppolo got injured, and he was ready for this, obviously. I forgot what his stats were. I think it was something like 200 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. But he was efficient. He made some pretty great throws that looked like a veteran out there. And this was his first career NFL game. So it just kind of is disappointing that this defense let this rookie quarterback play that well. Not only a rookie quarterback, but Mr. Irrelevant is his name. But like I said, major credits to him. He was ready for it. But they're not asking him to do that much. I'm not saying that he's getting carried by all of his guys because like I said, he was making some veteran throws out there. But not every offense has a Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, a George Kittle. But he was ready and he was able to lead them to that to the win. But the Dolphins could not stop Christian McCaffrey. For some reason, Duke Riley opened the game guarding him, and on the first play, but on the Niners' first offensive drive, he like cooked him on some type of stop and go, or I think it was just a streak route, and Duke Riley just like tripped and fell. But that was like a 45-yard gain for the Niners. And they really couldn't stop him all game. The running game, he didn't really have a huge run until like the very end of the game on that last drive. But in the receiving game, he was pretty much cooking the Dolphins. Had a receiving touchdown late in that first half that was really a killer, considering that the Niners did get ball to open up the second half. But the defense just really had a tough time. They didn't play the worst game, but they definitely could have played better, considering that they had a seventh round rookie quarterback that they definitely could have taken advantage of, especially blitzing more. Which is something that Josh Boyer loves to do, so I'm really surprised that they didn't do that too much. But I guess it does make sense considering all the weapons you have running around the field. But next up, it's Tua, and I know it's not something I wanted to bring up, but it's true. Tua was off from the very beginning. Obviously, on that first drive, he looked great, making that. It was a one throw, like 8 yards, and then Trent Sherfield basically did the rest himself. But ever since that throw, he looked awful. Like after that 1-for-1 75-yard touchdown pass, all of a sudden he was like 1 for 7, and then ended up he was like 10 for 22. Like he was looking really inefficient at the start. And a lot of them, I will say, a lot of the throws that he made were pretty much on target. Receivers not catching balls, but a lot of them were also too high for Jalen Waddle, too behind Tyreek Hill. We saw that one interception late in the game. His second one of the day. I don't know how he possibly made that throw, because you never see him make that mistake, especially this season. You saw him maybe last season at some points, but this season it's just so surprising to see him make that stupid of a mistake. But it's really just annoying, and I know Tua haters finally had their day because they've been hoping on it forever. They had half a day against the Ravens in the first half, but then obviously they had to shut up once Tua led a 21-point comeback. But other than the first half of the Ravens game, Tua haters and Dolphins haters really haven't had their chance to shine, other than when Tua made that awful underthrow in the Bengals game. But other than that, like, they really haven't had a game to fully laugh off of. So this one was mainly it. And to me, you know that Tua is a good quarterback first of all, when people are finally waiting 2 full months to make a full comment about him, but that he ended up throwing for almost 300 yards and 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. That's considered an awful game, and by far his worst of the season for Tua, which isn't even a terrible game. It was a bad game from him for sure, but it wasn't even a terrible game. Joe Burrow threw 5 interceptions in week 1. Josh Allen has like 7 in the past 5 weeks. But obviously, people aren't going to even bring that up. So, um, it's fine. Not every quarterback is perfect, obviously. So you're not going to have to be perfect. It's against the number one defense in the NFL. So if it's against any type of defense, I'm hoping that he has a bad day against the Niners. But I do think against the Chargers, this team should bounce back. But with all the injury news, because there was multiple injuries yesterday, but Tua with his ankle injury, McDaniel said he's fine. He'll play against the Chargers, barring any setbacks, which is kind of what I expected. If we're speaking technically, Tua didn't really finish the game against the Niners, meaning that he still is undefeated when he starts and finishes games. I'm just throwing that out there. Obviously, I'm not counting that. But on the other side, Jalen Waddle with his leg injury, he was out for most of the game, and I know people are talking about, oh, Jalen Waddle had a very quiet game, like 1 catch for 9 yards, but he really didn't play. I think he got injured like in the second quarter, tried to come back for the second half, and basically like re-aggravated it. But he's going to play, which is good because we're going to need him against that Chargers defense. I'm excited because I do think that the Dolphins will probably have some type of throwbacks on. I'm hoping for the white throwbacks, which is funny because I think those are the same uniforms that we wore in 2020 against them. But Tua, Jalen Waddle are expected to play. Teron Armstead, great news from McDaniel that we got today. Teron Armstead was very close to playing in the 49ers game. Obviously, would have been huge for him to do so. But like I said in the preview, I didn't want him to. Just to make sure, especially after like the Tua Bengals game, anytime a player is like, he has a pretty somewhat big injury, I don't want him to play. Just keep him out for the 1 week. We're going to need him for the rest of the season. So I'm glad he didn't play in that game. But it's crazy that he was able to play with an almost torn pec. But it's looking like he will play against the Chargers. If he's very close to playing against the Niners, he should probably be available to play against the Chargers, which is good. Because against Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa's brother, and Khalil Mack, we're definitely going to need Armstead. And on the other side of the O-line, Austin Jackson, once again to the IR. He got injured in the Patriots game, first game of the season, went to the IR, ended up coming back just for this past game, and got re-injured, back on the IR. There's 5 games left this season. The IR is 4 games, so he's basically done for the season. But it's fine. I talked about it in the preview. Brandon Shell was playing at a very high level when Austin Jackson was injured, so I'm not completely... Obviously, it sucks to see him get injured, but... Brandon Shell kind of deserved that spot. I don't know why Austin Jackson got his spot back, but obviously it's Brandon Shell's spot now, so it looks like it'll be Shell at right tackle, Robert Hunt right guard, Connor Williams center, Robert Jones at left guard, and then Teron Armstead at left tackle. If he's back, hopefully, for the Chargers game. But the Dolphins did sign Eric Fisher, who was the former number 1 overall pick in 2013. He started 15 games for the Colts last season, and in 2020 he started also 15 games for the Chiefs. And he was a Pro Bowler that year, so I don't know if he'd started any position, but just hopefully in case of any injuries, he will be there for some depth at the O-line position. But I don't really hate that signing, but obviously it's not something that I'm ecstatic about. But to wrap up the episode, Dolphins-Bills flex to Saturday night. This game was bound to be either a Sunday night game or Saturday night game, but it makes sense it's not Sunday night considering that the Dolphins have a Sunday night game this upcoming week against the Chargers, and that would be flying out to Buffalo to see that game on primetime, which is going to be huge. And for all that we know, it could definitely be the game that decides the division, but we have to focus on winning this game this weekend against the Chargers to make that a game to decide the division. But I'm looking forward to it because it's looking like the Bills will beat the Jets, and it's looking like hopefully the Dolphins will beat the Chargers. And if that happens, then the Dolphins will be 1 game behind the Bills. So if we do win that, we take over the division with the tiebreaker over them, because obviously we'd have the 2 games then. But if the Bills do beat us, then they'd be 2 games over us, which would really suck, because I would love to win the division for the first time since 2008. But that'll wrap up. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a great day. Peace.